All right, so I'm just going to be going over these AP classroom progress checks. And this is once again to get you ready for the final so that you are familiar with what an FRQ looks like on the AP exam, which is also what your final is going to have in it. So on the left here is the code. It's in the first half of here. I just split my screen so we could answer it as well as we could see the code and see the questions here. So write a statement to create a light sequence object, grad show, that has the initial light sequence 0101, 0101, 0101. Write the statement below. So this is literally, we just have to translate between the two. Let me go up here. See if it's gonna work. Type. There we go. So write a statement to create a light sequence object. So I'm gonna go back to my old friend, scanner scan equals new scanner system in. And this statement is going to guide me in making this construction of this new object that is light sequence. So remember, scanner is a class. So I need to think of what class am I creating? Oh, I'm creating a light screen, or light sequence, sorry. And scan is always the variable name that we have for our scanner. And in this case, the question is telling us we should name it grad show. It's important that we use the variable names that College Board gives us or the questions give us. But if we're creating variables that they don't give us, then they can be whatever we want. But this one does say it has to be called grad show. So we want to make sure it's called that. It's going to be a new, we need the class name again. So light sequence. And then that is how we construct a new object. But if we look over here, we know that in our object, we need also a string that is going to be the sequence for it. So let's do that. And we have our string sequence right here. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste that just so I can make sure it's correct. I double quotes and paste. There we go. All right, so that is how we are going to construct the light sequence that we're going to call grad show. All right, part B, write a statement that we'll call the display method to display the light sequence for the grad show. And here we want to just literally translate this question from English to Java. So we want to write a statement that we'll call the display method. All right, so we're going to be doing display. Perfect. Let's add some stuff to it. To display the light sequence for the grad show object. This is a grad show at display question. And once again, we want to make sure we go over here. We want to make sure that the parentheses here match up with the what's in our parentheses over here. And in this case, there's nothing in the parentheses. So we want to make sure here in our code that there's also nothing in parentheses there. And we need the grad show dot if we are working in another class where that method does not exist. So we can see that display exists in light sequence, but we're working in kind of the runner class or the main class, so that we have to call grad show dot display so we know exactly which light sequence that this is a command for. Part C, write a statement that will be used to update grad show light sequence to the new one. So with that, I've got to look through my list of methods, and I see one right here called change sequence. So that looks exactly like it's going to be updating my light sequence. So let's do it. Once again, very similar to the last display one, I'm going to call grad show dot change sequence. Remember, we need to make sure that the parentheses and the parameters match up. So here I see that we have a string sequence that needs to go inside our parentheses. So I need to make sure that I do that. So once again, I'm just going to copy and paste. Don't forget about the quotation marks. There we go. All right, part D, write a code segment that will call the insert segment method to insert the segment 1111, 1111 in the current sequence for grad show at index 4. The resulting sequence will be stored in the string result sequence. All right, so it told us that we're going to use this method here. So once again, it's important to see what's in those parentheses, those parameters there. And let's do it over here. So once again, just going to go read this English and translate it to Java. So write a code segment that will call the insert segment method. Perfect. I'm calling the method insert segment. That's how I do it. To insert the segment, okay, now it tells us what we want to insert. So I'm going to copy and paste that. Copy. I'm going to put that in my parentheses. Perfect. In the current sequence for grad show. Okay, so this is grad show. Grad show dot insert segment at index 4. Now I got to make sure that I do this correctly. So once again, I'm going to look over here at my code. I can see that I have a string first and then the int. It's got to be in that order. That's important. So I am going to do my string first and then comma 4. And that will be my index number that I inserted at. Okay, so we've gone through this part here, right? So we'll call the insert segment method to insert the segment, that string, in the current sequence for grad show at index 4. We've all done that. The resulting sequence will be stored in the string result sequence. Okay. String result sequence equals. It's super important to make sure that we follow our directions here. Sometimes they'll tell us to take your result and store it in a variable, like they did in this question. But they could also tell us to print it, or they could tell us to return some information. So we want to make sure that we're doing that, because you will lose a point, whether it's on the final that you guys take or the AP exam that you take, if you do the wrong thing, right? So if you decided to print that out instead of storing it for result sequence, you're going to get a point off for that. All right, and question E here. I'm just going to actually extend this a little bit more down. All right, so part E, scrolling down here. Assume that the string old sequence has been properly declared and initialized and contains the string segment. Okay, so we know that it does contain the string segment. That's important. Write a code segment that will remove the first occurrence of segment from old sequence and store it in the string new sequence. Consider the following examples. So if old sequence is that long thing and segment is 1, 1, then it's going to remove the 1 and the 1 at the beginning here. So then your new code would just be 5 zeros and 3 ones. So it removes the first occurrence of it. So for example, if this is 11 and this is our old sequence, it's going to remove the last 2 ones, because that's the first time 1, 1 occurs. And you're going to get just the 5 zeros left over in our new sequence. And then the last example here, it says that our sequence here is 0, 0. So therefore, it's going to remove the first 2 consecutive zeros here, leaving the string of 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. All right. So this is going to be our first one that's not just one line of code. You could do it in one line of code, but it's going to be pretty messy. So I would just recommend not. Also, there's more than one way to accomplish this. I'm going to show you the solution that first came to my mind, but there are other ways of successfully doing it. So the first thing is going to be, we need to figure out where that sequence number is going to be in our code. So we're going to get int index. So I'm going to use a variable that I call an index, and we're going to say equals old sequence index of, and then we call this segment. Contains the string segment. All right, and what this is going to get us is this is going to tell us where that segment is located in the word or in the old sequence. And it does give us the first occurrence of it, which is good because that's exactly what we're looking for, is the first occurrence of segment. So note that if I called this this line of code in index equals old sequence index of, for this first example, index would become 0 because the first occurrence of it is right at the beginning, and it always gives the first index value of it. So that would be 0. If I called it here, my index value would be 5, because we have 0 through 4 here, and then 5 and 6. So index would equal 5 at this point. And then we also, if I called it here, my index number would be 2, because it starts occurring at the second spot. All right, and I'm also going to do just a int length equals our segment length. In this case, the length of the segment was always 2, but it may or may not be the case in the future. So we need to make sure that we know the length of our segment, and we need to make sure that we know the index number and where it begins. So once I know that, I can then start and write my new sequence here. That contains the string segment. Okay. All right. So it says that assume the string old sequence has been properly declared and initialized, but it doesn't necessarily say anything about the new sequence. So I am going to say string sequence is equal to, and we're going to use substring for this. Okay, so the first thing we want, I'm going to use this example here because it's the most challenging to get working. So what I want is I want everything before index right there. So I'm going to set up a string that's going to let me take old secret dot substring. And I want the substring to occur from 0 all the way to index. I remember when I do this, index is actually, it's that number -1, which is kind of why it functions like this. So if I want the first 2 letters and I go from 0 to index, this gives me 0 to 2 minus 1, which is 1. So it'll give me characters 0 and 1, which are the first 2 and exactly what I want there. Okay, I then also need to grab the last 5 here. And the way we're going to do that is by using that length. So I'm going to also add this to old sequence dot substring. And in this case, we're going to say index done. And what that's going to do is obviously our index for this part is 2. Remember that occurs at 2, and our length is also 2. So 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. So then it's going to start my sequence at 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, boom. Now we're resuming at 4. And because I didn't do comma and put an end to it, it's going to go all the way through the end of the string, which in this case is exactly what we want. We want the rest of the sequence. So there is going to be our code, and that's all we have to do. Once again, you could have used like this command right here. You could just put it in here instead of creating a variable. So you could have done this in one line of code, but it's a little bit easier to take it out and expand it so it's easier to read. All right, and we have F here. This is the last part of progress check 2. 2 lights will be arranged on a 2-dimensional plane. The vertical distance between the 2 lights is stored in the double variable A. The horizontal distance between the 2 lights is stored in the double variable B. Straight line distance between 2 lights is given by the formula, square root of a squared plus b squared. So this is just your distance formula, or it's Pythag as well. Write a code segment that prints the straight line distance between the two lights according to the formula above. So we do know A and B are going to be doubles, so that's good. They tell us that here and here. So now we need to do something that's going to print. Okay, once again, these words are super important to make sure that you're doing the right thing with it. So I know that I'm going to be doing a system.out .println. The difference between println and print on these things doesn't matter. So you could just do print if you wanted, but usually we do println unless there's a real specific reason we don't want to go to the new line after that. All right, so I want to take math dot square root. And what do I want to take the math dot square root of? And we can combine this all in one line of code if we want to right there, but maybe just since I'm teaching it, I'll make it a little bit easier and say that we are going to do it this way first. So math.pow, and we're going to call this a2. It's going to be my variable name because it's going to be a squared. So if I do math.pow, I just want to do a comma 2, and that will give me a squared. If we wanted to, we could also do just a times a, and that would accomplish the same goal. Although that would keep it as in, no, that'd be double, so that'd be perfect too. Okay, so we have our two variables, and now we can just say a2 plus b2. And that will print it just fine. Once again, if you're using variables that are talked about, like a and b, you have to make sure that you use those, which we did. But if you're creating your own variables, you can use whatever variable names that you'd like, and that should work. Once again, we could have just put this line of code in place of a2 if we wanted to, and just done it in one line of code. Either way is just fine. And that is how we would do this Unit 2 progress check, FRQ question.